Right, hello everyone. Yes, tonight, excuse me, my throat's a bit rough tonight. Hope I won't affect my reading stuff out. Tonight we're talking about the Hinman murder, Mary Brunner particularly, because she actually has two N's in her name. I don't know if we've been pronouncing it wrong all this time. Do you still pronounce that Brunner? Her name has two N's. But yeah, she got immunity from prosecution, and she took part in the murder of Gary Hinman. So I'm going to read out her police interview because I wanted to cover the Hinman murder again anyway, because I don't think the stream that I did originally did it justice. But I did read out what it says in the Manson file about Bobby Beausoleil, the Cupid If You Please chapter, as part of that stream. So I was going to read out Mary's interview, so what she says happened at the Hinman house, and that's interesting, obviously. And then I'm going to read like a summary of how she in the end got immunity and recanted her testimony and all this. It gets crazy. So I think it's quite a lot to get through. So I'll make sure there's chapters in the description if you want to skip to that and skip through it. Just have to say hello to everyone. It's a live stream, obviously. Hello. Yeah, we've got 37 people here already. Sorry, this angle's weird. Got the computer different angle tonight. There you go. Right. So how is everyone? And yeah, this is a quite grim, obviously. It gets into a description of the murder when she's reading out her, when she's, what I'll be reading out Mary's statement, obviously. So yeah, warning for that. But I think if people come to expect that from this channel, don't they? Yeah. So yeah. She was a real Brunner's Brunner. Yeah, that's it. I don't know, but yeah, I'm going to say Brunner. I think that was more appropriate. But everyone says Brunner, don't they? So I don't know. Yeah. But on all the legal documents and that, yeah. That's it. Well, I'll cover that because I'm using a summary of his book, but I'll make sure that it's linked in the description where I got it from. It's a post on the TLB research blog. But yeah, I'm going to just. Burton Katz was the prosecutor at the second Gary Hinman trial because the first one ended in a hung jury, didn't it? And yeah, so that's what we get into basically later on. Yeah, crazy stuff. Like I said, I've got a lot to read out, so I'll get into it pretty quickly. But yeah, she says some interesting things that sound different to what the general telling of the Hinman murder is as well, and also things that back up what Ella Jo Bailey said, if you listen to that as well. Interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's German or Dutch or what. Yeah, it sounds Germanic at least, don't it? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Like Van Houten as well. That's sounds European, doesn't it, somehow? Yeah. Interesting names. Yeah, and this interview, I don't think this was up at the time. Sorry, there's a fly flapping around in front of me. I don't think this was up on Cielo Drive at the time. Actually, no, I was going to read something else first. Wait a minute. Sorry, this is Mary Brunner from Midwest to Manson. In her early life, she was born December 17th, 1943 in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Middle-class background, reportedly shy and studious. Graduated from the University of Wisconsin with a degree in library science. Life before Manson. She moved to California in the mid-1960s, worked as a librarian at UC Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley, drawn to the emerging counterculture in San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury. And that's a yearbook picture, I think. Then. Meeting Manson. She met Charles Manson in early 1967, shortly after his release from prison. He charmed her at a time she was seeking something deeper than mainstream life. She invited him to live with her, and Brunner became Manson's first follower. Together they lived in her apartment and then began traveling, gathering other followers. And yeah, but so she's the first Manson girl, essentially. He initially moves into her apartment and then they go off traveling. I think Squeaky joined them while they were still in the apartment and then they went traveling, if I remember rightly. Yeah. Brunner is a German geographic last name. It means someone who lives near a spring or well. Wow. I've ever listened to the description of the motive for the Hinman murder by Manson in the Tom Snyder interview. I'm not sure. Probably not. I haven't listened to a lot of interviews with Manson. Most of the main ones, though. Yeah, and like I say, because there's so much to read out, I'm going to get on to reading the interview now. What's that? There. All right, I'm not going to be reading when it's the different police officers asking questions, so yeah. And I'll make sure this is all linked in the description if you want to read it yourself and look at it yourself. It's from cielodrive.com. The following statement of Mary T. Brunner was taken on the 4th day of December 1969, commencing at 7:15 p.m. Interrogation by Paul Whiteley and Charles Gunther, I think is how you pronounce that. Homicide Bureau, Detective Division, Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Sergeant Whiteley, directing your attention to approximately the last part of July this year, did you have occasion to go to Gary Hinman's home at 964 Old Topanga Canyon Road in Malibu? Yes. And who did you go there with? It was Bobby Beausoleil and Sadie. Who is Sadie? Atkins, Susie Atkins. How did you get to Gary's house? I think it was Bruce drove us up there. Bruce who? Davis. What did he drive you there in? It was either a Ford or a Chevy Ford, either 650 or a 658 Ford. Was this a indistinguishable car? Yeah, and the word indistinguishable is used whenever, obviously, the tape, you can hear what said on the tape. No, it belonged to one of the cowboys at the ranch. About what time did you get there? Maybe midnight, 11 to midnight, someplace in there. You remember what day of the week it was? Friday. It was a Friday, yes. What happened when you arrived at the home? Sadie and I went in. What door did you go in? There is only one door, right? You go up the steps and then you go in the room by the tree and then you go in the door right to your left there. There is another door. Oh, there is the door around to the other side, but you still go through the room by that tree to get into the house. Did you knock? Yes. And who answered? Gary. And you and Sadie went in? Yes. And where was Robert Beausoleil at this time? He was outside down the road. What was he doing down the road? Well, if Gary was alone, we were supposed to give something like light a match or light a cigarette at the window or something, and then he would come in. After you go into the house, did somebody signal him? Yes, Sadie signaled him. How did she do it? However we had arranged to do it. It was something about lighting a cigarette. Oh, I don't remember what their code was, some silly little code. You didn't see her do it, though? No. Where were you when she was doing it? Gary and I were talking in the kitchen. What happened next? Then Bobby came up and we just talked for a while. And then Bobby told Gary that we needed some money. And Gary said he didn't have any money. And then jabber jabber. And then Bobby took the gun out and said, you know, we weren't kidding. We really do need some money. And then they got fighting over it. And Gary got hit with the gun. Let's stop right there for just a minute. Did you come there with any kind of weapon? Just a penknife that I always carry in my purse. It wasn't like a weapon. Did Sadie have a weapon? No. Robert Beausoleil, you say, had a gun. A pistol, revolver. Was it an automatic? I don't know. Did he have anything other than a gun? He had a knife. A fight developed in what part of the house? Kitchen. Between who? Bobby and Gary. During the struggle with the gun, did Susie get into it? Not really. Did you get into it? No. What were you doing? Trying to stay out of the way. It was pointed this way and that way and this way and that way, and I was dodging to the other side of the kitchen every time it went. What was the next thing that happened? Well, Gary quit fighting, and then his head was all cut in all kinds of places. Where was it cut from? From getting hit with the gun. Did the gun discharge at any time? Sometime, yes. There were 2 fights over the gun. Oh, yeah, there was a fight, and then that stopped, and then Bobby went to make a phone call to the ranch, and then he gave Sadie the gun while he did, and Gary got the gun away from Sadie, and then we fought over it again. The gun must have discharged the first time, because I am sure it didn't the second time. Right, so here already she says that Bobby was the one that phoned the ranch during the fight over the gun. Whereas Bobby's always said it was Mary that went and phoned the ranch, but she says that it was Bobby that went and phoned the ranch. And this was during the struggle between Robert Beausoleil and Gary Hinman. Yes. And you and Sadie Atkins were only spectators to the struggle. The first time, the second time, I think we were all in it, because Sadie, let's not jump, let's take it in sequence. Okay. All right, during the scuffle, Gary's cut was bleeding because he was hit with the gun. Yes. Who hit him with the gun? Bobby. Then what was the next thing that happened? Then Bobby asked me to clean Gary up, and I was cleaning Gary up, and he gave Sadie his gun, and he went to call the ranch. Let's stop right there. Where are you cleaning Gary up? In the kitchen, he was sitting, where the refrigerator is there, on the chair between the refrigerator and a little bit of indistinguishable, it going towards the sink. All right. You want me to go on? Yes. So then Sadie had the gun, and then Gary got it away from her, and Gary stood up and took it away from her. Anyway, Gary got the gun away from her, and Bobby came back in the room, and the four of us were all fighting together, all trying to get the gun away from Gary, and Bobby wound up with it. This is the second altercation you had? Yes. Did that take place in the kitchen also? Yes. What you are saying then is that Sadie had the gun trained on Gary and no one else was in the room. No, I was in the room. You were in the room. Yes. How did he get control of the gun? He just walked up to her and said, now Sadie, blah, blah, cut this out, stop acting this way. And she backed off and he reached out and then wrested it away from her. Okay, and at this time you all came into the kitchen and started fighting for the gun. Well, I was in the kitchen all along, and Sadie and Gary were in the kitchen all along, and Bobby came back. He had gone to the living room to make the phone call, and then he came back and there was more fighting the second time I told you about, and then Bobby got the gun back. All right, then what happened? Then we heard somebody coming to Sadie. I went to the living room to see who was coming, and then somebody called out, Charlie or Bruce, and said something, so we know Bobby, so we knew, or Bobby knew it was them. Anyway, and Gary went to the door and he was yelling, call the police and all that sort of stuff. Let me stop you for a moment. Did Charlie come there in response to something? He probably came, I suppose, because Bobby called him. When did Bobby call him? I told you, when Sadie had the gun, he went to the living room to make a phone call. Did you overhear the conversation? No. How long was it from the telephone conversation to Charlie and Bruce coming? The gunfight and a little bit more. It wasn't long. Well, how long is that? Oh gosh, half an hour? An hour? Oh, 20 minutes, 25 minutes? All right, indistinguishable. Charlie, when you say Charlie, you are speaking of Charlie Manson and Bruce Davis came to the house. Yes. And did they come in? Yes. Did Bruce Davis have any weapon? A knife. Did Charlie have a weapon? Yes. What sort of weapon did he have? A real short sword. Can you describe the sword? It was just a real thin blade with a handle and a loop. Maybe it didn't have a loop, with a... Miss Brunner is indicating the sword has a handle that has a guard which would extend from the forefinger across to the little finger, covering the hand. And what happened when Charlie got there? Well, everything happened in a rush and it wound up. I was in the kitchen and things were happening in the bedroom and in the living room, whatever, because Gary used it for both. So when they say the bedroom and the living room, they mean the same room because he used them for both. Yeah? And it was just fighting, sounds of fighting. And then Charlie came out in the kitchen and his finger was cut open and... Where was the cut? In here, indicating the left forefinger. Was it cut badly? Yes. Where was his sword? I don't think he had it then. Did he have blood on him? No, he was just dripping from his finger. All right, then what happened? And then he asked me to put some bandage on it, and I did. And then Sadie was in the other room. She was putting a bandage on Gary's head. I didn't see her do that, because by the time I got there, she had pretty much done it. And then they left. Not Gary, Charlie and Bruce. Did they leave any instructions when they left? No, they just left. Yes. And now, of course, we're told that Charlie threw down the sword and said, this is how you be a man, after he slashed Gary and walked out. So, yeah. But she says, no, Charlie didn't leave any instructions. How long were they in the home? I would say an hour at the most. During the time that they were there, did they do anything other than scuffle in the front room? Gary and Charlie talked. About what time was this that Charlie came with Bruce? It was hard to figure without any clocks. You arrived there Friday night around midnight. So we got there around midnight. It must have been around 2 when we left, maybe. 2 in the morning, yes. This would be Saturday morning then, yes. And what happened then? Gary went to sleep. We all went to sleep, more or less. Somebody stayed awake all night, and we kind of took turns staying awake. Where did Gary sleep? On the floor. Where on the floor? As you go into the living room, to the right in the corner, in the far corner to the right. Is this next to anything? The bookcase. Is there anything else in the living room there? Right near there is a chair near him. How about on the walls? On the walls. Oh, there's a little thing up there. Like, what do you call those things you put up? You have flowers in. A Buddhist shrine type thing. Where did you sleep? In the floor, in the middle of the room. Were you near him? Not particularly, no. Where did Robert sleep? In a chair. Where did Sadie sleep? On the floor, in the living room. Did you sleep in such a way that Gary could not get out? Somebody was awake all the time because you were thinking about that. In other words, you took turns staying awake. Yes, why? So Gary would not get out. In other words, Gary was being held there in his house against his will, yes. And why was he being held? So he wouldn't go to the police. And what were you staying there for? Why was it anyway? You were trying to extract something from him? He came for money. We came for money, but by this time it was obvious he didn't have any. How much money? Somebody said he had $30,000. Did you ever look for some money? No, his money was in stock and bonds. We looked around, but he didn't have any cash. We looked in his checkbook. That's what Ella Jo Bailey said, the stock and bonds thing. How much did he have in his checkbook? I don't know, not very much. I would say less than $100. Did you look for a safe? No. During this time that you were, from the time that Charlie and Bruce and Robert, and I believe Sadie, you said, had the altercation with Gary in the front room, until the time that you were standing guard at night on him, did you do anything regarding the wound on Gary's body? On his body? He didn't have a wound on his body, just his head. All right. And well, I done what I told you in the kitchen, and then Sadie wrapped up another one across his face. Did you attempt to suture the wound? The next day, yeah, not that night. Okay, let's go from there. What happened Saturday morning? Let's take a break for a second. But yeah, you can see they're taking talking about things slightly differently to what you generally hear. Like I say, she said that it was actually Bobby that made the first phone call, not her, which is what is told. And also, she said that Charlie didn't leave any orders when he walked out, but we're told generally the general law of this is that Charlie said, "This is how you be a man," after he slashed Gary's face, threw the sword down, and left the sword. But that's not what Mary says here. Yeah. Right, worth 261,416.8 cents, isn't it? In $30,000 is worth that today from 1969. So just have a look at the chat for a sec. And yeah, there are some pictures I've shared on the subreddit as well. I'll show them after I finish reading that. Yeah. Uh-huh. Sorry, just put the chat quick for a second and then I'll carry on. Need a break from reading for a minute. Right. I should carry on because this takes about half an hour to read it. Okay, let's go from there. What happened Saturday morning? Just sat around the house. The only thing that happened all day Saturday is once I was in the kitchen and Bobby was sleeping in the other room and Sadie was in the bathroom and Gary tried to get out. He tried the door, but the door was locked and we all heard him and went running. Which door was locked? The door by the bathroom that goes out by the tree. You are speaking of the door that goes by the bathroom to the porch, to the hall to the porch, and you stopped him. Yeah, we all stopped him. Where did you take him? We just walked back in the living room. What did you do all day while you were waiting around? Well, we were kind of thinking, Gary would heal up and see. We didn't know what to do because we were afraid to leave him the way he was, because we knew he was going to charge us with assault. And we talked to him. We talked to him about him coming with us to the desert and just stayed around. What happened Saturday night? Nothing mentionable. Did anyone come to the house from Friday until Saturday night? One person came to the door. And what kind of person was this, man or woman? I think it was a guy, and Sadie was sleeping at the time in the room with the tree on the couch there. And she just said something about, she woke up and said something about Gary not being at home because the door was locked. 2, the door right by the tree going to the steps. Was there any telephone calls made during any of this time to the Hinman home? Yes. Who answered the phone? Sadie did, all but one, and I answered once. When Sadie answered the phone, was there anything unusual about the way she spoke? She used an English accent sometimes. What was the story she was telling these people who asked where Gary was? She said something about his mother being sick, or his father being sick, one of his family being sick, and he'd gone to Colorado for a few days. Did you ever answer the phone? Once. And when was that? Sunday, and this guy Jay called. He called before when Sadie answered and asked if he could come up and stay because he was in town and he didn't have a place to stay, and said no, that Gary had gone out of town, and that he said she could stay in the house, but he didn't want anybody else to come or stay over. And then he called back, and I talked to him, and he asked if Gary had called or anything. And if he did call, would I ask him if Jay could come stay? Which is interesting, but I'm sure that's not Jay Sebring. Jay Sebring had other places to stay, didn't he? Did anything else happen on Saturday night? Not that stands out. Let's go to Sunday. What happened Sunday? Another quick look at the chat. See what you're saying. Sunday, Sadie went to the store because we needed groceries. God, did she go Saturday or Sunday? It seems like when she went Sunday and got some bandages. Is Sunday the day you tried to do something for Gary's cuts? It must have been Sunday that I sewed up his cut. Just took a couple of stitches. What did you use? A needle and thread. I guess it was dental floss. Did you use anything else? And I've always said it was Susan that stitched up his face as well, but Mary's saying she did it here. Did you use anything else? An ice cube. What condition at that time was Mr. Hinman in? General condition or specific condition? General. General? Well, he was pretty good. Had the bleeding subsided? Yes, and then I tried to clean out the cut on his cheek because there was a real big blood clot, but then it started bleeding again, so I left it alone. Excuse me. What was the next thing that happened on a Sunday? The next thing was anything. Then Gary called the ranch. Who called? Gary called. He went in the kitchen and called. Not Gary called. Bobby called. Quite a difference. She got the names confused there. Yeah, but no, she meant... So Bobby went and called the ranch again. This is an interesting thing, right? And what was the conversation? After he hung up, he said he told me he was going to kill Gary that night. So what is this when Manson ordered him to kill Gary? Not as he walked out the first time, as we're normally told, because there's a second phone call made to the ranch, and that's when Bobby says he needs to kill Gary. Right, she says, after he hung up, he said he told me he was going to kill Gary that night. What did you say? Something to the effect, there must be something else you can do. What did Sadie say? Sadie and I didn't talk a thing. Bobby told me this in the kitchen, and then he told Sadie after supper, and I don't know what Sadie said. Okay, then what happened? Then I made supper, and we ate, and I was out in the kitchen, and indistinguishable dishes, and then I heard the noises, like fighting in the living room, and I thought Gary must be trying to leave again, and Bobby had stabbed him, and Sadie came in too. She must have been in the bathroom. I don't know. But I remember the two of us were standing on the sort of straight in when you come in from the front door, the hallway. Yes, as you walk up, you come in the hallway. You go in the living room, like we didn't move to the right going in, you know what I mean. Did you hear Mr. Hinman say anything? Yeah, he said, don't do any more. And Bobby asked him to chant. He had been chanting all week, and Bobby asked him to chant some more. And he started to chant, and then he got up and he went in the bathroom for a while. Who went in the bathroom? Gary. And then he went back in the living room and we started cleaning, wiping the house up for fingerprints. And then he laid there and chanted for a while and then went unconscious. I guess he was unconscious. Let me get this right now. There was a scuffle in the living room and Bobby stabbed Gary. Then Gary went into the bathroom, yes. Did anybody have to help him? No. No? He was like in shock, You know how you can do things. Then he came out of the bathroom and he went back into the living room or the bedroom. Yes. And did he lay back down on his own? He must have. I don't recall now. Where was he bleeding from? From his chest. Was he bleeding heavily? He laid down. It couldn't have been too heavily. What was Susie doing all this time? She was helping clean the house for fingerprints. So I understand up to this point, you have been told by Bobby that Gary is going to die. Yes. So you and Susie are starting to clean up the prints because you know it's just a matter of time before he goes. Yeah, and after he stabbed him in the chest, I thought that would be it, What did you use to clean up fingerprints? Dish rag, cloths, and then he laid there for a long time with his eyes open. He had a blanket over him, and we cleaned the house, and then he just shut his eyes, just laying there, breathing normal, regular, I mean. And then Bobby said something about getting our stuff together, so we got the garbage together because we figured, what garbage? Like cans, it was just the garbage, the kitchen garbage. We thought our fingerprints were on it, so we dumped that out, some of it. And we had lots of strips of sheets that we had wrapped around Gary's head, that was about it as far as garbage and stuff. Was the gun part of the garbage? The gun, no, that wasn't part of the garbage. That went along with me. I carried the gun out, and then we got everything together, and then got ready to go. And Sadie and I went into the room with the tree, and then Bobby stabbed Gary again, apparently. Why do you say that? Why did I say what? That he apparently stabbed him again. He must have. He was going to finish him off. Did you hear something that made you think that? We went out and shut the door, but then Bobby came out and said, "Okay, let's go." And then Gary started a real loud, deep breathing, real raspy loud. He did it a couple of times, and Bobby went back in through the kitchen window, and then we opened the door and put a pillow over Gary's head for a while. And then he asked me to hold it there, so it wouldn't be so loud. And then he called me to the kitchen while I was still doing it, and I don't know why he called me. Let's stop right there. You have all gone out the door, and you hear Gary, this gurgling, or is he breathing hard? Yes. So Bobby goes through the kitchen window. Yes. Back into the house. Yes. He opens the door back up to allow you and Sadie to come in. Yes. And then he takes the pillow and puts it over Gary's face, and then he asks you to hold it for him. Yes. Why? And then he called the ranch and asked if somebody would come and pick us up, and there wasn't anybody that could come and pick us up. Let's not jump. You want to get to a point here. Okay. Why did he want you to hold the pillow over Gary's face? Because Gary's breathing was so loud, he was afraid somebody was going to hear it. Did you? Yes. Did you hold the pillow? Yes. Did Sadie? Yes. Did you see Bobby do it? He did it first, and then he went to make the phone call, and then he asked me to do it while he made the call, and then he called me into the kitchen, and then I asked Sadie to do it. Why did you ask Sadie? She was the only one left if Bobby was in the kitchen. Why did you ask Sadie? Because he called me in the kitchen. Did Gary expire while you were holding the pillow over his face? He was still breathing. When did he stop? He must have stopped when Sadie was holding it, I suppose. Were you there? Some. I walked back in the room and she say something, "It's all over with," or something like that. And when did you ever take blood and paint it on the wall? When did this occur? That was we must have been out of the house. I don't think it was on the wall when we went back in the house. So it must have been after he really died. After that, because his breathing stopped. Did you ever see what was written on the wall? I was told. No, I didn't see it. Who told you? Bobby told me. What did he tell you? He said he wrote pig on the wall and that he made a paw print. What kind of paw print? A cat's paw print. That was it supposed to what? That was it supposed to represent? What was it supposed to represent? The Panthers. When you say Panthers, you're speaking of the Black Panthers. Yes. Did he tell you what he wrote it in? In blood. Whose blood? Gary's, I imagine. There wasn't anybody else's around. When you left the house, didn't you take some clothing, our own clothing? Didn't you take some other clothing that had blood on it? Just clothing of my coat, my cape I had worn up there had blood on it. I took that. We took the bandages and we had used that had been washed out, but they still had blood stains on it. Did you take those to the car? Yes. Whose car? Gary's car. What kind of car? A Volkswagen bus. What colour was the Volkswagen bus? Red and white. Is there something on the sides of it that makes it distinguishable? An eagle. It is in white on a red background. Did you start the car with the keys? No, we didn't have the keys. We hot-wired it. Who is we? Well, Bobby tried hot-wiring it and couldn't get the wires together. And I said, "Here, why don't you just cut them?" And I gave him my penknife, and he just cut them. So she's admitting to help steal the car and everything here. Where was the Volkswagen bus? Because Charlie had left with the keys, so they had to hotwire it. She was in the back of the bus. Where in the back? She was in the back. She started in the front, but had so much trouble getting it started, she just got in the back. During the time you had Mr. Hinman in the house, did you ever find any pink slips? Yes. Where did you find those? In a little mailbox in the living room. And what discussion was made over these pink slips? Well, first Bobby and Gary asked for a copy of his driver's license. First, Bobby asked Gary for a copy of his driver's license so he could copy his signature, and he just signed his name to it, to date them a week or two earlier. Did Gary do this willingly? He didn't make any fuss about it. Anybody have a gun on him at the time? No. Did anyone have a gun at the time? There was a gun in the house, but nobody was holding it. Did Robert have a knife? I suppose he had it, but I suppose it was at his belt. He wasn't holding it. What was Robert carrying his knife in? Does he put it in his waistband or in his pocket? Not his pocket. He carries it. It is outside his pants in some sort of sheath. I think it's a leather sheath. Is it a hard or soft leather sheath? Soft leather, I imagine. Have any kind of design on it? It has some inscription on it. On what? On the blade, I think. Something in Spanish. Go ahead. Charlie, I have a few questions for you. Mary, but just one quickly. When you left Spahn Ranch with Bobby and Susan Atkins, what was your reason for going to the Hinman home? To see if we could get some money from him. When you say to see if you could get some money from him, To ask if you could get some money or take it by force. To ask for it, and if we didn't get it, take it by force. Who asked you to go there? Bobby, I suppose. Who told Bobby to go there? I don't know. What other name do you know Bobby by? Jasper Daniels. Never read that book. Mary, when you arrived in the home, how was Gary dressed? Pants and shirt. No, he might have had his pajamas on. I don't remember. Do you recall seeing any bagpipes around the residence? Yes, he played. Oh no, he didn't play them. He played a recording. He played a little miniature. Who played them? Gary did. When you left, did you people take them? When we left, they were in the Volkswagen, so we took them. No, they were in one of the cars. Anyway, they wound up at the ranch. But they were in the house when you got there. No, they were in his car. Do you know how the kitchen table got broken? During either the first or second fight, I don't remember. While you were in the house for 2 days with Mr. Hinman, while he was on the floor wounded, did you and Robert and Sadie search the house? Did you go through the drawers looking for house deeds or anything you could find? No. Nobody went through any drawers or anything. I went through the steel case in the living room, like a money box. Yes, like a money box, I guess. He doesn't have any. He didn't have any drawers or anything. Oh yeah, the kitchen drawer. We took some tools. What kind of tools did you take out of that? Just, like screwdriver and that sort of stuff. Did you see how many times Gary got struck on the head with the gun? Oh, several. I don't know how many. And this was done by who? Bobby. Did you ever see Sadie hit him? No. All right. While you were at the house, did you ever call a doctor? No. You took care of him yourself, medically speaking, best you could. As much as I could, yes. Can you tell me why, after he signed the pink slips over to you, why you hotwired the car? Why you didn't just take the keys to the car too? See, when the guys left, Bruce and Charlie left Friday night, they took the keys. Charlie Manson and Bruce Davis took the Fiat Friday, right? Yes. And that was the first night Gary was injured? Yes. They didn't have the pink slip signed that night, did they? No, see, they used the keys. He had all his keys on the same ring. He had the keys for the Volks and the keys for the Fiat. Did Gary give them permission to take the Fiat that night? No, I don't know if anything was said about it at all. As you recall, did you take any clothes off of Gary? I think after the first night, his shirt was all bloody, and so Bobby asked me to get him a clean shirt, and either he took his shirt off or I helped him take his shirt off and put something clean on. All right, when you left him on the floor, the last time you saw Gary, after you were holding the pillow on his head, and after you went outside and Bobby climbed back out through the window, how was Gary dressed at that time? Pants and undershirt, I think. T-shirt, like. T-shirt. Do you know what kind of pants he had on? Just slacks. No, it might have been jeans, either slacks or jeans. Was he laying on his back or on his stomach? I think his back. The clothes that you took off Gary when you changed for new clothes, what did you do with those? I don't know. Did they smell bad? No, I never smelled them. That is, nothing I ever noticed. All right, when you left, you said you took the gun with you. Yes. Do you know what happened to the gun? No. Well, did you give it to you? Well, who did you give it to after you carried it outside? Oh, I had it on me, and I left it in the car when we got back to the ranch. I don't know what happened to it after we got back to the ranch. Why did you take the gun? Did somebody tell you? See, when we were going out, we were going to get out of there. We were going to hitchhike out of there, which, so I don't know if somebody suggested it or I suggested it. Anyway, I put the gun on so that what was I going to do? I put it on way up here in a holster so that it would be hidden. Then you covered it with a blouse or something. If you were going to hitchhike, why did you take the clothes and bloody sheets? I didn't want to hitchhike. I was dead against it because, there isn't much traffic, and I didn't want to do it. Did you throw the clothes then in the gully or anywhere? I threw them in the garbage can. What garbage can? Behind the restaurant. Behind the restaurant at Topanga down by the Rouse Market. Is that where you went for coffee and strawberry cake? Yes. Who told you to put them down there? We took them along, and we still had them with us, and I think we just dumped it in there. Just said, this is a good place, and just dumped it. Did she dump the gun in the garbage can? No, I don't think so. I don't know what happened to the gun. When Gary was signing the pink slips for the car, there were no keys to either car in the house, and the Fiat was already gone with Bruce Davis and Charlie Manson. Yes. Was Gary bleeding then, when they left? No. When you left, the last day, after he signed the pink slips for Bobby, was he bleeding at the time he was signing the pink slips? No, not really. This was sometime in the middle, sometime during the day. He was just lying all day Saturday and all day Sunday. He just laid there. He didn't bleed then. The bleeding stopped sometime Friday night. Just so I can get one other thing. When Bruce Davis and Charlie Manson took the car on Friday night, the Fiat, you said Gary didn't tell them they could have it. I don't know if Gary said they could have it or not. I don't even know if Gary knew they took it or not. I don't know what happened. They had to get home. I don't know what they took it for. All right, you're telling us now that while you were outside in the little outdoor area by the tree, Gary started to gurgle loud or make some noise, and Bobby had to crawl back through the window. Yes, because we had locked ourselves out. Now, you also said you went back in the house with him. Yes. Did you see Bobby stab him the last time in the house? No. Then how do you know he stabbed him? It is like Gary was laying there in a coma, and Sadie and I went out in the next room. And then Bobby came out, and then Gary started that breathing, so you figure something had to happen. He didn't have the gun, I had the gun. You were in the front room with him, holding the pillow. No, he didn't stab him again after we went back into the house. Which one of you cleaned Bobby's knife? He must have cleaned his own knife. Did you see him clean his knife? No, I don't recall seeing him clean it. Gary told you to leave the residence how many times? Several times the first night. He also told Charlie Manson and Bruce Davis to leave. No, I don't know. There was, he asked us several times to go first before any fight ever started. And then after the first fight, he said, please, we will forget it. We will just call it a scratch. Just leave. Get out of here. And then after that, all right, something during the 2 days. Somebody took some money from Gary. Who did that? I took some money from him. How much did you take? About $20. Where did you find the money? From his wallet. Did you take it from his wallet while Gary was still laying on the floor? Yes. Who did you give the money to? Put it in my pocket. Who was standing there when you took the money from his wallet? Sadie was there. Did he give you permission to take the money from his wallet? He was dead. What you have told us so far is the truth to the best of your knowledge? Yes. Now stop and think before you answer this one. Isn't it a fact that Charlie Manson sent you people down to Gary Hinman's house? No, that's not a fact, unless Charlie and Bobby had some discussion before I got back from the ranch that I don't know anything about. But Charlie never said anything to me about going to Gary's house. When Bobby called Charlie Manson the first time, what was the conversation that you overheard from your end? Something about the fact that Gary had put up a fight and things weren't going the way he wanted them to go. And what was it he asked particularly? I don't know if he asked him anything in particular or not. Was he just stating this to him when Gary was putting up a fight and wasn't cooperating? Yes. And you said approximately 20 to 25 minutes later, Charlie Manson and Bruce Davis showed up at the house? Yes. And Charlie had the sword? Yes. And then it was the second conversation. This was the following day, and that is when Bobby called up the ranch. Is that right? You mean that was Sunday? All right, Sunday? Yeah, this was Saturday night. Oh, yes. What did you overhear in that conversation that I didn't hear? You didn't hear any of it? No. But Bobby came back to you and said, we have to do Gary in. Yes. Did he tell you why? No, by a shake of head. He says, it's going to be tonight. It is going to be what? Tonight. Mary, did you ever see Charlie Manson or Bruce Davis hit Gary Hinman? No. Do you know how he got the slash on the side of his face that severed his ear? He got it from one of those two. He had to. Now, after everybody left on Sunday night, did anybody ever go back to the house? Yes. Who? Bobby. Was anybody with Bobby? Not that I know of. He told me about it, and he talked like he was alone. What did Bobby tell you he went back to the house for? He tried to erase the paw print on the wall. And how many days later did he go back to the house? 2 or 3 days after, Sunday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. All right. Did he describe to you what the house looked like, or smelled like, or anything like that? He told me it smelled terrible. He could hear the maggots. Hear the maggots what? In Gary. Eating Gary. Is there anything else you would like to add about this that we haven't covered? There isn't anything else to it. This is what you have told us is the truth to the best of your knowledge. Yes. We will conclude this at 8:13 p.m. And that's it. Right, so yeah, well, so obviously slightly different to the usual telling of it. She said that when Manson left, he didn't give any orders as he actually left. But Bobby makes a second phone call, and it's after this that he says that he's going to kill Bobby. So it sounds like Manson possibly did order him, but just not the way we're told. And yeah, the fact no one would come and pick them up. They called the ranch again and asked someone to pick them up because he did this to them at the La Biancas as well. And also, he didn't leave the keys to the Volkswagen. He took all the keys with him when he left. He took the keys to the Fiat and the Volkswagen. And so they had to hotwire the Volkswagen. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Well, she just trying to defend Manson, though. Did Manson say something before he left that night as well? And she's just trying to defend him, yeah. And also, another thing, yeah, that I've not mentioned on any of the slides, but you should know this about Mary Brunner. Her and Sandy, as in Sandra Good, were arrested during the afternoon of August the 8th, 1969, and were in jail for credit card fraud at the time of all the TLB murders. So that's an interesting thing. Would Mary have taken part in the TLB murders had she not been arrested earlier that day? That's the other big question. And Sandy was also in jail with her. And Sandy talks about that in Squeaky's book, Reflection, in here. But yeah, it didn't register at the time that it was Mary she was locked up with. But yeah, she talks about being in jail the day that the TLB murders happened. There's quite a lot about Mary in here as well, obviously, yeah, because they were close. They met earlier. Yeah, it's sad. Hinman got robbed and murdered and didn't deserve it. Like I say, if you listen to what Ella J. Bailey said as well, she said she felt bad about it because she gave them the impression he had money in stocks and bonds, but I think, yeah, it was wrong anyway. Yeah, they didn't have money. And I've also heard as well that Gary was threatening to report Charlie for the underage girls as well. That was another reason they had to kill him. And they were scared that he was going to, call the police, basically. That was why they killed him, yeah. Sounds like Mary's making sure she doesn't throw Manson under the bus. Yeah, yeah. Well, she's pretty scared of Manson, isn't she? And yeah, the repercussions of doing that to Manson. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, just looking at what people are saying. Yeah. It's the fact they were covering their tracks while he was still alive and chanting just makes them even more heartless. Yeah, yeah. Well, it does sound sad. And like I say, I can't. We don't know the emotion that was in her voice. As I'm reading it out, she might. It does sound like, yeah. At some points, it says that she says no by shaking her head or yes by nodding. So you have to assume that she did sound more sad. But obviously, you don't know. It's not like reading a script. It doesn't say if she's crying as she says this or whatever. It does sound very heartless, doesn't it? And she says, yeah, she took the money out of his wallet after he was dead and all that. And yeah, they went round and wiped all their fingerprints off and all that, which makes them sound like, more experienced criminals, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, she had his baby as well, didn't she? She was the only one of the girls that had his baby. Squeaky got pregnant with his baby, but had a miscarriage, apparently. Yeah. Yeah. That's it. Decent human beings weren't safe around the family. Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing as well. They make out that he made unwanted advances towards Bobby as well, but that was not the reason why. It didn't have anything to do with it, I don't think. No. Yeah. That's part of why it was so easy to get with the brainwashed helter-skelter narrative, because those girls so obviously lied to protect him so often, yeah, and being loyal to him outside the court and all that, all the girls that weren't jailed, that were outside, so, it didn't help him at all, did it? It made it look worse. We'll get into it, though, in a minute. Diane Lake in her book said when she heard about him and being killed, that it was the turning point for her to turn against the family, yeah. Well, like I say, Ella J. Bailey left. She said she didn't want to go. And it was Charlie that was giving her orders to go, apparently. And she got not TJ, it was Bill Vance to say no, she's got better things to do. And she went off with Bill Vance and disappeared and never came back. She didn't want to go to the Hinman house. So, yeah. But Mary's definitely saying no, Charlie didn't tell me. It was Bobby that came up, so who knows what's true. But I imagine, yeah, Charlie was telling her what to do. And she just doesn't want to, implicate Charlie. She's scared of him. No, it doesn't come from Bobby, I don't think, originally. The best of it is just, yeah. Where exactly does that come from? Well, it's just him. It's just said Hinman made mescaline. Yeah, that was one of the things he did. He was a mescaline dealer. It's just generally known. Bobby didn't make it up, no. And yeah, they supplied the mescaline to the Straight Satan's anniversary ball, and they overdid it by the sound of things, no deed on it, but they blamed the mescaline. Yeah, but that was a common scam that bikers were pulling at the time as well. So yeah. Yeah. I'll move on to my next slides anyway, so we'll get on with it. I'll move on. Right, so after doing all that she admitted to there, basically, right, and she's at the time of the TLB crime, she's in jail for this credit card fraud, but she gets out on bail, and so like after she's like not even in jail at this point, and she gets in late 1960s when she gave that statement, she'd been out on bail and she was back living with her parents. And in late 1969, this is her immunity agreement. Early 70, Brunner met with her representative from Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department and District Attorney's Office in Wisconsin. She claimed they promised her immunity from prosecution if she testified about Hinman's murder. Testimony and indictment. Brunner testified before a grand jury and at Robert Beausoleil's trial, implicating herself and others in Hinman's murder. Based on her testimony, Beausoleil was convicted. However, in May 1970, Brunner submitted an affidavit recanting her previous statements, only to later reaffirm her original testimony during a hearing. Whoa. Yeah, so I slightly misspoke. It wasn't during the trial that she recanted. It was when Bobby was trying to get a new trial. She suddenly submits this affidavit. And the other girls had got to her, the girls that were outside. Subsequent testimonies. In 1971, Brunner testified during the penalty phase of the Tate LaBianca murder trial and at Manson's trial for Hinman's murder. In both instances, she denied involvement in Hinman's death and invoked her Fifth Amendment rights when pressed. But she does say in her statement that she did at some point hold the pillow over his face. Indictment dismissal. In September 1971, a grand jury indicted Brunner for Hinman's murder. She moved to dismiss the indictment, citing the alleged immunity agreement. The Superior Court granted the dismissal and permanently barred her prosecution for the crime, despite everything she did. Yeah. Appeal on court's decision. Prosecution's appeal. The state appealed the dismissal, arguing that the court failed to record the reasons for dismissal in the official minutes, as required by Penal Code Section 1385. Though that wasn't the real reason, that was the only legal reason they could find. It was obviously because they were appalled, because they found out she was more involved in the murder than they thought, and they gave her immunity. The court's ruling. The Court of Appeal upheld the dismissal, noting that the court's signed order explicitly stated it was based on Brunner's immunity claim. The appellate court found this sufficient and emphasized the importance of honoring immunity agreements to maintain the integrity of the judicial process. Implications. This case underscores the complexities of legal agreements and the challenges that arise when key witnesses provide conflicting testimonies. It also highlights the judiciary's role in ensuring that promises made by law enforcement are upheld to preserve trust in the legal system. So Mary Brunner walked because of a deal, basically. The court accepted that she had a credible claim of immunity, even though she changed her story multiple times and tried to backpedal. The justification. The need to uphold trust in the justice system, that if law enforcement offers immunity for testimony, they can't just reverse it later, even if the witness is clearly unreliable. Even the prosecutor in Bobby's second trial, Burton Katz, wanted Mary Brunner to face charges after she lied on the stand. But the judge said no. Why? Because taking away immunity once it's given would scare off future witnesses. It was about protecting the integrity of the system, not necessarily justice for Gary Hinman. So yeah. The psychological grip. Why Mary changed her testimony as well. Manson's first disciple. Brunner was the foundation of the family dynamic. She had his child, Pooh Bear, lived through the earliest brainwashing, and her identity was tied to her status as his number one girl. Emotional blackmail and loyalty. Even behind bars, Manson had tentacles outside via the Aryan Brotherhood, outlaw bikers, and ex-family members still active. Brunner knew she was being watched. It's plausible that any deviation from the family line could have risked retaliation, either against her or her son. misguided love, or trauma bonding. This wasn't just cult loyalty. Trauma bonding is real. Mary had spent years being rewarded for obedience and punished for dissent. The trial would have reopened old fear pathways. If she testified honestly, she wasn't just betraying Bobby, she was breaking the only psychological system she'd known for years. Flipping, then flinching. Initially, she cooperated under immunity, possibly believing the state would protect her, but that faith cracked under the weight of threats, guilt, and internal conflict. Recanting may have been a survival move, and tragically it worked. So yeah. Yeah, well, apparently they all stayed on the lawn at his house when they had the black bus, didn't they? They knew him well. And they say, yeah, Charles Manson met Dennis Wilson at Gary Hinman's house. Not in the hitchhiking story that they tell you, yeah. It's all crazy. None of it's what they tell you, yeah. Yeah, so it's shocking. Is no one got anything to say about how shocking it is that she got immunity and walked? Like saying the public aren't so aware of this one as well. Yeah. Yeah, Bobby Beausoleil is still looked up despite identical involvement. Beausoleil also killed only Gary Hinman, yet he was tried, convicted, and despite multiple parole hearings and a relatively clean record behind bars, he's still inside. Part of the reason may be timing. He was convicted before Manson and the others, so his case wasn't folded into the larger narrative of the Manson family's killing spree and media circus. Also, parole boards treat him as a proxy for Manson, because he was the first to kill in Manson's name, even though his case doesn't have the same high-profile victims. Susan Atkins died in prison despite terminal illness, but she was involved in far more murders. So she was denied compassionate release in 2009, even while paralysed and near death, partly because she was deeply involved in the Tate murders, which left a scar on the public memory. Her earlier role in Hinman's death didn't help, but her fate was tied to the symbolic weight of the Tate LaBianca killings. The People versus Brunner decision prioritises procedural justice over moral accountability. In plain terms, the system would rather let someone potentially guilty walk free than set a precedent that the government can break immunity deals. So yeah, even though she was as bad, her role was as bad as Susan's role in the Hinman thing, but they let her walk free because they needed a witness. And then we get to the perjury of Mary Brunner. I'll link the post with the whole quote. This is like a summary of it, basically, but this is the book written by the prosecutor for the second trial of Bobby Beausoleil. Mary Brunner, originally from a stable Midwestern background, became the first female member of the Manson family after meeting Charles Manson in 1967. She was involved in the murder of Gary Hinman in July 1969. Her immunity agreement. Prosecutors seeking to build a case against Manson and other family members negotiated an immunity deal with Brunner. In exchange for truthful testimony regarding the Hinman murder, she was granted immunity from prosecution. Initial testimony. Brunner testified before the grand jury and during the guilt phase of Bobby Beausoleil's trial, providing evidence that contributed to his conviction and death sentence. So they did use her testimony to convict Bobby. And the recantation. After Beausoleil's sentencing, Brunner experienced guilt over her role in his conviction. She returned to Wisconsin and, under pressure from remaining family members, recanted her earlier testimony, claiming it was fake. Perjury charges. Brunner's recantation led to perjury charges. However, the court upheld her immunity agreement, emphasizing the importance of maintaining the integrity of such deals, even if the witness later changes their testimony. Courtroom behavior. The article describes the disruptive behavior, it's a chapter from a book, the disruptive behavior of the Manson family members during court proceedings, including alleged intimidation tactics. However, some of these claims, such as openly carrying weapons in court, may have been exaggerated or unsubstantiated. Because he tried to say the girls around the court were walking around with the buck knives openly out and stuff like that. It's like, I think he's exaggerating slightly. And this is, the quote that I found interesting, which suddenly leaps into how this is more political than I ever thought, because it's about America on the world stage, not just how it looks to the American public as well. Quote from The Perjury of Mary Brunner. The courtroom was packed to standing room capacity, filled with media from all over the world, including the Soviet bloc nations. The tension was so palpable you could skate on it. I wondered how we were playing in the Iron Curtain countries, whose correspondents were feverishly scribbling in their pads, eager to show the disintegration of a corrupt capitalistic society. The implications of this, the international optics. This trial wasn't only being watched by Americans, it was monitored by Cold War adversaries, especially communist regimes eager to highlight the moral collapse of the West. Political stakes. The Manson family crimes played perfectly into anti-American propaganda. Young white middle-class kids rejecting their upbringing, embracing chaos, and murdering without remorse. It looked like a failure of capitalism to contain its own youth. Institutional panic. The US legal system, already under pressure, needed to project control and moral clarity that likely influenced why immunity deals like Mary Brunner's were upheld no matter what, why Manson had to be portrayed as the singular manipulative mastermind instead of the system admitting to broader societal failures, why the family women in court were so demonized, they were made into symbols of American youth gone mad. This wasn't just about justice for Gary Hinman or Sharon Tate, it was a performance of law and order on a global stage. They couldn't afford to let Mary Brunner's perjury blow up their case, and they couldn't afford to admit the family wasn't just a fluke, but a reflection of deeper cracks in American society. You don't think she would have gone to CLA, but she went to Gary Hinman's, didn't she, and took part and helped, help with everything. Would she have? I wonder. Yes, but this is a shocking another angle, about why the American government have reacted the way they have to these crimes, because it made them look bad to the rest of the world, to people that want to condemn Western society, say that capitalism causes debauchery and that. This looked very bad, didn't it? And they had to minimize that, make it look like this was just like a one-off crazy man did this, rather than admitting that there was broader societal failures, as it said, that caused all this. Why the Hinman trial was politically charged. The Cold War context. The trial happened in 1970, the height of Cold War paranoia. Foreign media, including Soviet bloc journalists, packed the courtroom looking for evidence of moral decay in the West. The American justice system was under pressure to project strength and control, especially against a backdrop of countercultural rebellion, youth violence, and disillusionment with Vietnam. This wasn't just about Gary Hinman. It was a proxy for America's moral authority on the global stage. Katz's job was to reassert order. Prosecuting Bobby Beausoleil wasn't just about convicting a murderer. It was about showing the family could be brought to heel. The first trial failing, hung jury, was a political embarrassment. When Katz secured a conviction in the second trial, it was a symbol that the system still worked, even against cult chaos. Nixon's involvement and national narrative control. This happens with the TLB murders, so after this. Nixon famously called Manson guilty before the trial was over, triggering a firestorm. The White House was keenly aware of how the Manson family was damaging America's image. Katz's trial, and later Beausoleil's, became part of the broader federal narrative management, and America had to look tough on radical violence. And I think that's what last thing, yeah. Nixon never had a thought, no. Yeah, so that's it. It was obviously that there's a much broader political dimension to this, basically. On the world stage, it wasn't just about how it looked to the American public and how much it scared the American public. It was about how bad it looked to the rest of, the world that wanted to condemn capitalist culture, And so, yeah, that's a whole other rabbit hole of its own. It will go down in a different stream. But yeah, it's funny that Burton Katz, the prosecutor, came out with that quote in his books, though, when he's talking about this trial, the fact that the Soviets were watching it, and it made him worried that they were seeing this because he knew how they'd report it, basically, and they apparently did report it. This has been going over an hour now, so I'll probably end this pretty soon. But I want to have a bit of discussion, if anyone had anything to say about what I just said. But yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, how different Mary's account is, and I'll make sure that's linked in the description. It's on cladrive.com if you want to look at it. But yeah, that seems to be pretty accurate, maybe. Who knows? But she's obviously trying not to implicate Manson, isn't she? But she does seem to be being quite honest. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, I think the motivation for Leslie to go definitely, and probably Susan as well, because Susan was involved in the Hinman murder. They went to try and get Bobby out because they were worried about uh, him implicating them basically. Well, Leslie was his girlfriend, wasn't she? She hadn't been involved in the Hinman murder, but she tried to say at the penalty phase that she was there as well. I read that out years ago. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, Leslie tried to say she was at the Hinman murder and saw Susan do it. She saw Bobby leave, and Susan killed him. And Susan tried to say that she killed him because Hinman lunged at Manson while Manson was there. And so she stabbed Gary Hinman because he was going to kill Manson. That's all at the penalty phase of the TLB trial. The United Women, which is after Bobby's been sentenced and everything. Yeah, so it didn't help anyone. Absolutely crazy. Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, like I say, it's been going over an hour and 4 minutes now. So I'll finish this and I'll come back and do a after show in a little while. Just give me a break. Yeah. Yeah, Leslie and Gypsy arrived with Bobby. Yeah, that's it. But Leslie's never asked to talk about Bobby. The woman that wrote the book about her doesn't ask her a lot about Bobby. Yeah, so Leslie's got away with ever having to admit that it was actually for Bobby, not Manson, that she did it. But doesn't matter, really, does it? In the end, who cares? Obviously, not the judicial system because they've let her out, despite never having told the truth. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I'll finish this now, and I'll do an after show in a few minutes if anyone's interested. Thanks for coming, everyone. And thanks for watching if you've watched this all the way to the end and you're on the playback.